Tonight on Home Cooked, celebrate the best of Australia with Julie's all-time Aussie favourites. From a traditional meat pie
What you have is a pie that's just full of meat every mouthful.
to the best from the bistro.
We may have stolen it from the Italians, but we Aussies love it.
And later, Julie puts Aussie icon Grant Hackett through his paces in the kitchen.
Now, I'm going to ask you, how do I get the poo out of this prawn?
G'day and welcome to Home Cooked. One of the best things about this country is its multiculturalism and the inspiration and the flavours that brings to our food. But there are a few dishes that are quintessentially Australian, and I'm going to show you tonight how to make some of those from scratch. The first one is an absolute icon. You'll find it everywhere, from the footy to the tradies' lunch.
Out on the patio we sit, and the humidity we breathe.
There are so many different kinds of pie. You go to the bakery now and there's all the gourmet varieties. I'm going to show you how to make a really simple meat pie, and the best thing about this is it's actually got meat in it. Just some shin beef or gravy beef, a nice cheap cut into about 3 centimetre cubes. I'm going to add to that a little bit of flour. So we season the flour for flavour. Give that a mix. And I pop that into a snap lock bag. Make sure to leave some air in there so it can all move around. Go. And give it a good shake to make sure that all that beef is coated. So in a nice big pot, I'm going to heat some vegetable oil over quite a high heat and brown the meat. I'll do that in 2 batches because if I put it all in at once, it'll release its juices and it'll stew instead of browning. The reason I brown the meat is to intensify the flavour, and the reason I put flour on it is to thicken the gravy while it cooks. Okay. So once the second lot of beef is browned, I'm going to add this half back into the pot, throw in a couple of diced onions, a couple of cloves of garlic, and I'll just stir that for a minute until that starts to cook. Just those couple of simple ingredients and it smells beautiful. Then all I have to do is add some liquid, ready to pop it in the oven. So it's a cup of really good quality beef stock. And a cup of red wine. If you'd prefer not to use the red wine, 2 cups of beef stock will do it. Put the lid on the pot and pop it in the oven at 140 degrees for about an hour and a half. Just make sure you use a pot that has oven-proof handles. While that's in the oven, get started on the pastry. For this pie, I'm going to use 2 different kinds of pastry. I use a short crust pastry on the bottom because it's strong enough to hold the meat mixture, and puff pastry on the top because it's delicious. For the short crust pastry, add plain flour, 125 grams of chopped butter, and a pinch of salt to the food processor. Whiz it up until it looks like breadcrumbs. Then add 1 egg and mix it till it forms a nice soft dough. Turn the dough onto a floured surface and gently bring it together with your hands. Then wrap it in Glad Wrap and put it in the fridge for about 15 minutes so it can firm up. So the meat's been cooking for about an hour and a half. It should be tender and falling apart. Ah. It smells beautiful. And the meat's really, really tender. Now this next step's pretty important. When you're making a pie, you can't have the mixture too wet or it'll just run through the pastry and it'll be really soggy. So what I'm going to do is remove the meat. I'm going to shred that up a little bit and then I'm going to reduce this gravy down till it's nice and thick. It already is quite thick, and if you were going to eat this as a stew, it'd be perfect just as it is. My youngest son, Paddy, never used to like meat pies, so I decided to make one of my own. And once he tried mine, he decided he liked meat pies. What a relief. Now that I've got the meat out of the pot, I'm going to put this back on the heat so that it reduces a little bit, and that'll ensure we've got a beautiful, rich, delicious gravy. And with this meat, I want to pull it apart a bit. I don't really want my chunks quite that big in the pie, but also what this does is it puts some shreds of meat into the gravy, so what you have is a pie that's just full of meat every mouthful. So in the few minutes it takes me to do this, my gravy's thickening away nicely over there. All I need to do is introduce a little bit of it back into the meat. So you don't want to put too much gravy in because you don't want a sloppy pie mixture. Any leftover gravy, don't throw it away. It's gorgeous on mashed potatoes. That's ready. Pastry's ready. Come back after the break. I'm going to assemble these pies and you wait till you see the finished product.
Later on Home Cooked, more of Julie's top tastes from the land down under.
Golden brown and crispy and beautiful.
Plus, what classic Aussie meal gets the tick of approval from swimming sensation Grant Hackett?
Oh, it's beautiful. Oh.
And will Grant pull off his first pavlova ever?
I should be able to hold this bowl upside down over your head.
Ah, okay.
Julie, what is for lunch?
I thought chicken. We had hoisin honey chicken wings last night. Tom's friends are coming over for my quick nachos tonight. Got it. I'll do my chicken skewers with my Australian style barbecue marinade. Brilliant.
Delicious, Julie.
Thank you, Margaret. See all my recipes, hints and tips online at fountainsauces.com.au.
Home Cooked with Julie Goodwin, brought to you by Glad and Fountain Sauces.
Welcome back to Home Cooked. Tonight I'm making some all Aussie favourites, starting with the icon, the meat pie. My meat's cooled down now and I've just rolled out my pastry in between sheets of Glad Bake, and that stops it sticking to the bench and to the rolling pin. Line each pie dish with the short crust pastry, then spoon a generous amount of the meat mixture into it. Any leftovers? On toast for lunch. Now it's time for the puff pastry top. You could use short crust pastry for the top, but I just really love a pie that's got that flaky golden brown light top on it. Just brush the edges with a little bit of egg. Place the puff pastry on top and trim off any excess. Use a fork along the edges as this will help to stick the lid to the base. Poke a hole on the top so that the steam can escape, and finally glaze it with egg yolk to ensure a lovely golden colour. Then into the oven for about 35 minutes. They look beautiful, they're shiny and they're golden just like I wanted them to be. Let's have a look in the middle. Oh yeah, look at that. And of course, it's not a pie without some tomato sauce and an Aussie flag.
This is Australia.
Tonight we're talking all Aussie favourites, and there's nothing more Aussie than a pub meal. My extensive research tells me that the #1 favourite pub meal is a chicken parmigiana. We may have stolen it from the Italians, but we Aussies love it. Chicken parma can be done in quite a few different ways. Some people put eggplant on the top, some people put a slice of ham before the tomato sauce. I like to use 3 different kinds of cheese. I'm going to start with the sauce. Over a medium-low heat, a dollop of olive oil, a couple of chopped brown onions and a couple of cloves of garlic. I just saute that fairly slowly so that it doesn't brown at all. Once the onions have softened, add a can of chopped tomatoes, some sugar and a good pinch of salt. Bring the mixture to the boil and let it simmer for about 20 minutes until it thickens and becomes really rich and intense. While it's simmering, get on with crumbing the chicken. So I want a chicken breast, just a smallish sized one like that, and I'll just slice that in half this way. Try and keep that evenly in half all the way along. I'm just going to pound it really, really gently so that it's an even thickness all the way through. And I do it between sheets of Glad wrap just so that you don't wind up with splatty bits of chicken all over your face and all over the kitchen. So I'm more concentrating up here on the thicker end just to bring it down to a similar thickness to the thin end so that it cooks at the same time. Once the chicken is flattened evenly, get the oil ready in the pan. The heat of the oil is critical for this dish. If it's too hot, the crumbs are going to go brown or even burn before you've cooked the chicken inside. While the oil's heating up, start crumbing the chicken. First, dip the chicken in some seasoned flour and make sure it's completely coated. Then dip it in the egg and drain off any excess. And finally, cover the chicken in breadcrumbs. Shake off any excess breadcrumbs and place it on a tray ready for cooking. The way I test the temperature of the oil is by dropping a breadcrumb in it. If it goes black straight away, the oil's too hot. If it doesn't sizzle at all, it's too cold. Okay, so that's given me a little bit of a sizzle, telling me that it's ready to be cooked in. And as with anything, you don't want to overcrowd the pan because you lower the temperature of the oil too quickly and it won't cook nicely. So I reckon probably 3 in this great big chef's pan is enough. And then depending on the thickness of your fillets, that'll be 3 or 4 minutes each side. And look at that, golden brown and crispy and beautiful. Once the chicken's cooked, set it aside and finish off the tomato sauce by adding some chopped basil. The basil will give the sauce a really lovely flavour. Next, put a nice generous spoonful of the tomato sauce onto the cooked chicken. And finally, my favourite part, the 3 cheeses. I like to use ricotta. It's not traditional, but to me it gives it almost a lovely cheese saucy fluffiness that I really enjoy. Next, I've got some mozzarella. And I enjoy using mozzarella because it gives it that beautiful stretchiness when you cut into it. And of course it wouldn't be Parmigiana without, well, the Parmigiana. The lovely, salty, sort of tangy, really rich bite. Be generous with it. Then put the tray of chicken under a hot grill. You'll want to keep a close eye on that because it'll only take a couple of minutes to be golden and beautiful. Bring it out, serve it with some chips and salad or some seasonal vegetables, and there you have it, another all-time Aussie favourite, chicken parma.
G'day Julie, how you going?
G'day Grant, good, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
You've picked a good day because we're looking at all-time Aussie favourites, and I reckon you are an all-time Aussie favourite.
Oh, I'm not too sure about that, but I'm ready to cook up a storm.
Well, don't go away because after the break, Grant and I are going to cook another Aussie classic.
And later, Julie teaches Grant the secrets to the perfect pav from scratch.
Okay, down you come. Ready? You're going to count to 10?
I can't believe we're doing this yet.
$100,000.
How will this change the entire game? Nine's the